What's going on, guys? Matt with MotoWorks here, and we've got a little bit of dyno prep for you. That's right, guys. I am prepping up the ZX14 in a couple days. We're going to be going on the dyno, so I just want to make sure that it's ready to go. And I figured I'd throw this little video together for you guys so that your bikes are ready to go, or cars, whatever. But, you know, since I'm working on a bike, mainly bikes, making sure that they're ready for the dyno, because as soon as they grab your bike at a dyno shop, the clock starts and time is money. So making sure that your vehicle is as ready as it can be, you know, barring any unforeseen things, you know, this is the time where you're going to catch a large majority of that stuff. So we're just going to go over the basic things that you need to check, and it should hopefully make that all-important dyno day go smoothly. All right, so there's a lot of basic things that really can trip people up. One of the main things is making sure your tire, making sure you have enough tread to spin that roller, because a dyno shop doesn't like to see low tread. They like to see a decent amount of tread, and make sure that it's a street tire on the dyno. Sometimes slicks or really sticky tires, they can get really chewed up on the dyno. That big roller is very gritty and it can really chew up, you know, an expensive track tire. So, you know, just make sure that your tire is in good condition. This one's almost brand new, so make sure it's in good condition. The tread is good on it. And also it's a good time, you know, check your tire pressure. Now, I recommend you check your tire pressure before any ride, but especially for the dyno, just make sure that you got a decent amount of air. What the manufacturer recommends is perfectly fine. All right, moving on from the tire, we want to check our chain, overall condition. So we want to check both the chain's condition as well as the sprocket's condition. So what we're looking for on the sprocket is that we still have some decent teeth there on the sprocket. Let me zoom you in here a little bit better. A really worn out sprocket, I'll flash up a couple pictures there. So as you see, a really worn out sprocket is going to be very pointy at the tip there. And as you can see, my sprocket here still has plenty of life left in it. I mean, these sprockets only have maybe 2,000 miles on them, so this sprocket is still in really good shape. As with the chain, I believe the chain was replaced probably right before I purchased this. So I just made sure that the tension was within the manufacturer's specification. I cleaned it up really good. I do have a video on cleaning your chain, and then I also have a video on lubing that chain. So this chain is cleaned, lubed. My sprocket's in good condition. So everything so far is looking good. Now, after you make sure everything in the back is in good condition, you know, making sure your chain is properly adjusted, properly lubed, you want to then make sure that things like oil level, coolant level, making sure that your fan comes on at, you know what I mean, at high temperature. So making sure that your fan cycles on and off is also something you want to do, because remember, they're going to be running this to its maximum potential. So make sure that your cooling system is in order. Make sure that your oil level is full. Come on over here. So making sure our oil level is full here. I got to hold this up level. It's leaning a little bit. So I like to make sure that the oil is full up to the top line here. Now, some diehards will actually run this about half full or real close to the bottom. You don't have to do that. I personally don't recommend it. The reason people run it a little bit lower when they go to a dyno is because they say there's a little bit of that oil fog in the engine, and your crank going through that oil fog can actually reduce the power output. And there are videos showing to a certain degree that that is true. So if you're trying to get the absolute most horsepower out of your bike, which is something I'm not trying to do. I don't care if this is the highest horsepower ZX14. I just want it to run right. But if you're trying to get the most out of it, I've heard that if you run the oil just a little bit on the lower side, that you can eke out, you know, a couple more ponies. So if your plan is to be the dyno king, I don't recommend it, but I have heard varying degrees of success by running the oil a little bit low. But oil on this bike looks good. I just changed this, again, within 1,000 miles. I changed it at the beginning of the season, and I haven't put that many miles on the bike yet. So the oil looks good on this. Another thing, making sure that your battery is in good condition. Now, I've already verified that because at the beginning of the season, I took it out, tested it. It's putting out a decent amount of cold cranking amps, and the battery is in good shape. It starts the bike without a problem. So, you know, there's nothing worse than getting to the dyno and then starting it, stopping it a couple times, and then having a dead battery. It could also potentially throw off things like power commanders, your fuel injection system. So making sure you have a good solid battery is not only going to ensure that it's going to start every time, but it's also going to ensure that your electronics are going to be working as they should, and that way they can actually tune your bike to the best of their ability. So I know my battery's good, I know my oil's good, I know the coolant is good, and I know that the fan comes on. So there's only a couple more items that I need to check off my list. Okay, moving on to the engine side of things. We want to check our air filter. I don't care how difficult it is to get to an air filter. Check your air filter. A dirty air filter will rob horsepower. So check that air filter, especially before a dyno appointment. Remember, guys, time is money. So if you've got a dirty air filter and they spend all day tuning your bike to a dirty air filter, as soon as you put a nice, clean, freer flowing air filter in, it's going to mess up the tune to a certain degree. It may not throw it off completely, but you know, in the game of inches, sometimes it does matter. So I know for a fact that this air filter is 100 miles old or 200 miles old, however many miles I put on it since I installed that air filter. Now, we did go to the highest, freest flowing air filter. We went with the F185, I think. Yep. So I know my air filter is good. Now, in addition to the air filter, since most air filters sit inside the air box right on top of the engine, they sit above the spark plugs. If you don't know when your spark plugs have been replaced, I at least recommend getting access to those spark plugs to look at them and see what shape they are in. I know that these spark plugs are brand new in this bike. I replaced them at 7,500 miles and the bike only has 8,500 miles on it. So I know these spark plugs are good because they're what the manufacturer recommended, and I replaced them not too long ago. So air filter, spark plugs, make sure that those are in good working order. And then as a final preparation, you just want to go around and check all your fasteners. One thing I like to do is I like to bring the tools along to take this little panel off here because the power commander sits right underneath this cover. I like to have that off with the power commander ready to go. You know what I mean? Anything that will cut down on the time they need to take to do something is going to save you money and maximize your time spent on the dyno. That's really what this is about, is maximizing your time as far as getting the bike tuned versus them having to do all this stuff to set your bike up for that tune. So things like your shifter, make sure that it's securely fastened, not going to fall off. Foot pegs, bolts, you know what I mean? Just go around the bike and make sure that it's in good working order. Make sure your exhaust is securely mounted. Make sure that you don't hear any excessive exhaust leaks, mainly coming from the head pipes. You know, exhaust leaks can cause power loss. So making sure that that stuff's secure and leak free is something that could potentially give you a little bit more horsepower on the dyno. Inlets, where the air inlets are, make sure that they are free of debris and any type of obstruction. You know, just anything you can see, you know, now's the time to do it. When you're sitting on that dyno is not the time you want to think, oh, I should have checked my air filter, or oh, probably should have put a nice fresh set of spark plugs in, or when was the last time I did an oil change? Now's the time to do it, guys. Now, guys, if you've been following along with the ZX14, I don't want to call it a saga, but journey. If you've been following along with this bike, you know that it's been a fun little project I've had, a fun little process of getting different parts, putting them on, putting it on a dyno, then taking it to the drag strip and, you know, kind of feeling it out, seeing if they make any difference. One thing you might not know is the past 2 times I've taken this to the dyno, I've had an issue on the dyno where at about 10,500 RPM, the RPM signal is lost. It just happens for a moment, but it throws a check engine light on and it screws up the dyno chart. So last dyno run I did on this bike, I didn't even show you guys the dyno chart, not because I was embarrassed of the number. I'm never embarrassed of the number. This thing made 185 horsepower to the tire with the Yoshimura exhaust and about 111 foot-pounds of torque, something like that. I don't care about numbers. When I go to the track, that's the only time I care about numbers. So yeah, on the dyno, it doesn't matter to me what it makes because every dyno is different. But the reason I didn't show you the dyno chart, and I'll show you it right now, is because basically, as you can see, it looks like a little kid scribbled on the dyno. So right at that 10,500 mark is where the RPM signal would go haywire, and basically it would just throw off the reading, torque reading, everything would be thrown off. So it wasn't even a readable, there was no readable dyno graph. So that's why I didn't bother showing you guys. Now since then, I hopefully have fixed that, and we're going to see tomorrow. So not only am I going to get this optimized for the air filter and the exhaust, I'm also going to see if my little fix this. Now what little fix did I do? Basically I called up DynoJet and I said, hey, my bike glitches on the dyno, what can you do? They sent me a fuel program, well, not a fuel program, they sent me a Power Commander program that supposedly is supposed to fix that. Apparently there's interference in the wires here, and that can sometimes, depending on the dyno, affect the RPM signal. So I flashed a fix in that, and we're going to find out if that fixed it tomorrow. But that's just a quick little video on what I like to do to get my bike prepped for the dyno. Hopefully it was helpful for you guys out there, and hopefully by doing this you actually save yourself a little bit of money, because ultimately, like I said, and I'm going to repeat it, you're going to save yourself time on the dyno. So if you liked the video, guys, as always, give it a thumbs up. Thank you so much to those of you who have subscribed to the channel, and next video, this beauty is going to be going on the dyno and putting down hopefully some good numbers, but we'll save that for the next video, guys. Thank you for checking this one out.